All right, welcome back. We have gone through so much content already. We've done the niche stuff, the target audience stuff, the competitor analysis stuff, and the how you're going to stand out with your own authentic edge stuff. I really hope you've done the exercises as we go along, because that's really where the true value in this course is, I hope, in addition to the information that we're giving you. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the idea of planning. Now, planning feels like one of those boring ass things, but I want to tell you a little story. A little story about planning. So a few years ago, was it 2 years ago? Can't remember with the pandemic, but like around about 2 years ago, while I was still working as a doctor, I came out of the hospital one day randomly, and some random dude shouted, was like, Ali. I was like, hey, how's it going? And he was like, I recognize you from your videos. I was like, cool. What's your name? And he was like, my name's Liam. I was like, oh, Liam, what do you do? And Liam said he was a business coach. And he said he was a business coach working for GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, big drug company, and also for AstraZeneca. And he was teaching them how to formulate their business strategy for going to market with like drugs that were worth like billions of dollars. And I was like, that sounds kind of interesting. And then he asked, have you got a business coach? I was like, no, do I need a business coach? He was like, yeah, you probably need, it would probably help. I was like, okay, can you be my business coach? And he said, yeah, sure. I've enjoyed your content, and I'm gonna, let's grab dinner sometime and I can tell you about what I do as a business coach. And so a few days later, Liam and I grabbed a cheeky Nando's. We went out for a little meal, and he just asked me a bunch of questions. He asked me, what are your goals for the business? I was like, I don't know. He was like, okay, what's your business plan? I was like, what business plan? I don't have a plan. I just make videos on the internet. He was like, okay, have you done any market research? I was like, nope. He was like, have you done any competitor analysis? I was like, nope. And he asked me all these questions of like the sorts of stuff that business coaches do in like normal businesses. And he was like, okay, I think we can level up your YouTube career businessy type thing by applying these simple concepts to it. So then a few weeks later, I went over to his house. He only lived about an hour away from me by car. So I drove over to his house, and we spent a few hours doing our first unofficial like business coaching session. And the very first thing we talked about was the idea of setting a plan. And so in this lesson, I'm going to talk to you about the power of having a plan, and we're going to go through two simple ways of doing a plan. Number one is the very, very simple Sketchpad way, which is what Liam did with me initially. And then secondly, we're going to talk about a planning process that we've learned from the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, in the book Traction, and through an official EOS implementer coach type person. That's like a fancier version of planning, which we now do with the business, now that the business is bigger. But really, there is a very simple way of doing a plan. And that involves just doing the thing that Liam and I did in our first session, where he was like, okay, in each of the rows of your plan, I want you to tell me what are your lines of revenue, or what are your areas in the business. And then we're just going to split the year up into these 4 quarters. And within the 4 quarters, we're going to have like 3 months. And it was like, cool. We have now split the year up into the 12 months ahead. So it was like Jan, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. I know my months of the year. And then on the side, we listed the various streams of revenue in the business. So it was like YouTube, there was like Skillshare, there was affiliates. And then we were sort of potentially dabbling with the idea of like physical product or something like that. And we were potentially dabbling with the idea of some kind of subscription thing. And so we got out a massive piece of paper, like on a flip chart type thing, and just drew this out. And he was like, all right, what are your major milestones that you want to do this year? And I was like, damn, I have no idea. He was like, all right, let's make some up. So when it came to, he was like, he asked like, what's your biggest source of revenue right now? And at the time it was YouTube, AdSense, and brand deals. But I said that I wanted Skillshare as a source of revenue from courses to increase. And the way we needed to do that was to make more Skillshare classes. And so we had that session in January, and he said, okay, how many Skillshare classes do you want to make this year? And I said, well, it would be cool to do one every month. And he said, well, one every month sounds a bit ambitious. How about one every quarter? I was like, all right, cool. So he was like, okay, by the end of this quarter, which class do you want to have made? And I decided I was going to make one on how to study for exams. Studying for exams. By March. And he was like, all right, cool. What's the next one? And the next one was going to be some kind of productivity Skillshare class. And then we had the idea of doing something themed around cooking. And then we had an idea of something doing themed around how to be a YouTuber, or words to that effect. And we ended up not following the plan to the letter, but that speaks to something that Eisenhower famously said, which is that planning is indispensable, but plans are useless. So like the act of planning is itself a good thing, even if you don't necessarily stick to the plan. We spent ages planning this course. We have not stuck to the plan, and we filmed a lot fewer videos than we thought we would in this day, because they're actually about 3 times longer than we thought they would be. But that just speaks to the idea about how planning is useful. Plans themselves, it doesn't really matter if the plan changes over time, but at least you kind of know what direction you're heading. And so it was this, just putting this down there, like, okay, by the end of March, I will have a Skillshare out about how to study for exams. And that class has been one of the biggest revenue drivers for the business since that time. And, you know, I spent ages thinking, yeah, we should probably do this on Skillshare and like having all these plans in my head. But until it was down on paper as a concretized, you know, a concrete quarterly plan of like, okay, these are the classes we're going to release, nothing really got done. And so I'm very, very bullish on more creators having a bit more of a plan for what sort of content they want to do. The next stage of having a plan is looking at something else. So for example, the YouTube channel, where it was like, okay, what are the main flagship videos that are coming up? You know, October, November time, we've got iPad and like iPhone. There's like Apple themed videos that come out. I decided at the time I want to do some kind of finance type stuff later that year. So we were like, all right, cool. Maybe we'll do a finance video there, a finance video there, a finance video there. And I decided at the time that I also wanted to make videos about books. So I was like, okay, maybe we'll do a book video over there and a book video over there and a book video over there. And it's all very rough. There's nothing fancy about this planning, but it's just, you know, thinking of it as like what's going on in the year ahead, thinking like this isn't even how businesses do it. A business plan would be much more detailed than this. But like what I find with most creators that I speak to in real life, even creators with like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, not really millions, the ones in the millions have discovered the power of planning. But even creators I know who have like 300, 400,000, 800,000 subscribers don't have any idea of an annual plan. They don't know where they want to get to. They don't know what the milestones are to getting there. And they're sort of thinking, still treating their creator thing as a bit more of like, oh, I'll just make whatever videos I feel like, which is fine. But if you decide that you want to treat it as a business, we need to be a little bit more keen about just very roughly planning stuff out in advance. So this is the very, very simple way of doing annual and quarterly planning. And I'm not going to tell you the slightly more, the very much more complicated way that we do it following the traction method. You don't even have to do that, but you know, the information is here for you. The traction method is really good if you have a team. It's like, to be honest, I just love it so much. I am going to start using this. Like, even if I started a YouTube channel completely from scratch and I didn't have a team, I would still use the traction methodology for planning stuff, just because I think it's actually really good and it makes you more disciplined about the sort of plans that you're following for your business. And so we've created this Notion template and worksheet for you that, you know, I would recommend reading the book. And we also have a book summary for traction down below from Shortform. You can check out Shortform for more book summaries if you want them. But we've got this little template as a Notion template and as a worksheet, so you can try your hand out at this annual planning thing. What were last year's company rocks? Rocks are basically 90-day goals or quarterly goals. If you don't have any, that's fine. You can roughly put some stuff down. What were last year's numbers in terms of revenue, profit, margin, and subscriber count? But you can replace that with your most important creator metric. And then you can look at what were the last quarter's company rocks. Again, rocks are just 90-day goals. So for example, it would have been a rock to create at that Skillshare class on studying for exams in the next 90 days. It's basically just a quarterly goal. And then we go into this year's plan. So we challenge our vision, and I'm going to show you what that vision document looks like in just a moment. We look at our target numbers for the year. It's useful having numbers in the air because like, I don't really believe in sticking like, you know, really having a firm, I must hit 5 million subscribers by the end of the year. But I think it is useful just to have a number in mind because it gives you a general direction. You know, our aim for this year is to try and hit 5 million across all of our different socials. So YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. I don't really care if we hit that number or not. Our strategy for hitting 5 million is basically do the same that we're already doing. Whereas if that goal was 100 million, it would be a very, very, very different strategy. So in that sense, it does sort of matter what number you choose for this because it sort of dictates what direction you want to go. And then we want to be setting our company rocks. So what are the main things we want to accomplish over the next 12 months? And then once we figured out what we actually want to do over the next 12 months, we can then break that down into a quarterly plan. Before we go to the quarterly plan, I just want to show you what that vision template looks like. Again, this is stuff that we've taken directly from Traction, from the Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you have a team, you should check them out. They're really, really good. But basically, it's asking questions like, what are the core values that you want to embody in your content and within your team, even if you are a team of one person? Speaking to the core values in primal branding as well, because once we identify what those are, we can make those come across in our content. Secondly, the company vision page asks us to define our niche and target audience. We've already talked about that. And then, you know, this 10-year target and 3-year picture. So again, in the details down below, I'll show you what our 10-year target and 3-year picture looks like. Our 10-year target is to build a profitable business while having fun and helping people. It doesn't have any numbers on it. Build a profitable business, i.e. make some money, have fun, enjoy ourselves while helping people live the best life through inspiring educational content, whatever. Most people say that you probably should put some numbers in your 10-year target or your 5-year target or whatever number you want to use for that. But again, I don't really believe in numbers in that sense. I believe in numbers in that they give us a rough sense of direction. But to be honest, 10 years from now, if our business is profitable, we're having fun, and we're helping people, that's good enough for me. But then we do have more specific like revenue targets and milestones and stuff when it comes to the 3-year picture. Again, not wedded to any of these, but like, knowing that we want to try and hit 10 million revenue in the next 3 years leads us to a very different strategy than if we want to hit 300,000 revenue in the next 10 years, in the next 3 years, or a very different strategy than if we want to hit 300 million revenue in the next 3 years. So it just sort of gives us a rough idea of where we're going with our business. And even something like, really sitting down and asking yourself, what do you want your creator business to be looking like 3 years from now? That's a very useful thing to sit down and do once in a while. I do this exercise about every 6 months where I think, what does my dream life actually look like? What's the stuff that I want to be doing? What's the sort of content that the business is going to be making? What does the team look like? What's the dream there? Because then you can kind of reverse engineer from the dream. But if you don't really know where you're going and you're just sort of going as you go along, yes, you can have success, but I mean, it does mean that you're likely to be a little bit more scattered. Anyway, that's what the company vision looks like as part of our annual planning thing. Then we can dive down and do quarterly planning. So I'll show you like roughly what our quarterly planning meetings look like. And this is again, a template that you can just follow for your own business. So it involves firstly reviewing the last quarter. So what were the goals of the last quarter and what were the rocks, the 90-day goals? And then we have the quarterly plan. Now this is probably the most useful part of this, and you can do this at any point. You don't have to do it when a quarter starts, especially if you're watching this course and there's no convenient quarter start point. You can number one, set your goals. So write down everything you'd like to accomplish in a dream world in the next 90 days. Then you can break that down into your rocks. So what are the main big kind of areas? The metaphor, and the reason it's called rocks, is Stephen Covey's famous metaphor of sticking rocks and stuff into a cylinder. You've probably come across the story, I'll tell you anyway. Basically, the idea is that there's a professor at the front of the class, and he's got this big cylinder, and he's got some rocks, he's got some pebbles, and he's got some sand and some water, and he asks the students, how do you fit everything in this thing, in this container? And because the students are a bit dumb, they decide to put the water first, or the sands first, or the pebbles first, and nothing fits. Whereas if you put the rocks in first, then the pebbles fall around them, the sand falls around that, the water falls around that, everything fits. And basically the idea there is that the cylinder is the amount of time that we have, or the amount of attention we have to focus on our priorities. And the rocks are our big priorities that if we don't add them in first, if we don't make time for them, they're never gonna happen. Whereas the pebbles are business as usual. So for example, a pebble in our business might be making 2 videos a week or releasing a podcast episode every week. That's business as usual. That's just generally what we want the business to do. Whereas a rock might be something like launch the Creatorpreneur course, or launch our next cohort of the YouTuber Academy, or launch this big project, or move to a new studio, or upgrade our camera gear. It's these one-off projects that are not necessarily business as usual metrics. Thirdly, we want to set some level of deadline. Again, I don't really believe in deadlines as such because, this is a creator business. We've signed up for this stuff because we don't want something like a corporate structure that has firm deadlines. But having said that, it is still useful to have soft deadlines. Like I said, so many of our courses would not have happened had we not set an arbitrary deadline to make it happen by a certain day. And then each rock needs to be assigned to an owner. So if you are the only person in your business, then you are going to own all of the rocks. And generally, an individual can be expected to do somewhere between 1 and 3 rocks per quarter. If you try and take on too many things, you're going to get scattered and not do any of them. If you take on too few, your business is not necessarily moving forward. So somewhere between 1 and 3 big projects per quarter works for most people. And then we've got a little table there where you can keep track of it. And the nice thing about actually assigning them to yourself is that later on in the outflow section in module 3 of this course, when we talk about the power of outsourcing and hiring freelancers and hiring your own team, if you have your own goals with your name attached to them, there's something psychological about that where you're like, I have assigned this job to myself. That makes you think harder about, could I assign this job to someone else? Could I maybe hire a freelancer to help me with this thing? And so this is the way that I would recommend you do your planning. At least if you have not done any planning up until this point, just ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, what do I want to do in the next 12 months? And therefore, number 2, what do I want to do in the next 3 months? And you can do that with one of these simple diagrams on a piece of paper if you really want to. Or if you want to start to get a little bit fancier about it, you can follow the method they use in Traction. Again, really recommend reading the book. It's absolutely sick. It's the method that we've been following for the last 1 year now. And we've been working with one of their official coaches who are expensive and good if you have a team that's making revenue, not so worth it if you don't, but definitely the book is very cheap and you might as well just read it. And you can choose to follow their annual and quarterly planning process if you want. But really, to be honest, just some plan of some sort is way, way, way better than no plan at all. And that is having a plan is a core part of having an appropriate business strategy, because coming back to the whole point of this course, We're trying to teach people how to think more like entrepreneurs. We are creatorpreneurs. We're not just creators. We're thinking like how a business thinks, and we're applying business principles and strategies and tools to our creative life to help level it up and to help turn it into more of a profitable business. So planning is just an indispensable part of that. And yes, there is that quote that says, no battle ever went according to plan, but no battle was ever won without a plan. And so it really doesn't matter if you go off plan. But the point is the act of planning itself is incredibly useful. It gives you so much clarity on what you actually want as an individual creator and what you have the capacity to reasonably do over the next short to medium term period. So that's my spiel about planning. Do check out the worksheet down below. That'll give you more kind of prompts about this. Check out our Notion template and our other templates that will help you with your planning endeavors. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.